Hello everyone. My name is Elise. Welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing so good today. We are going to be reacting to the National Book Awards long list for translated literature. I've been doing a reaction to this list for, I think, 3 years. I think this is the third year that I've done it, and I'm really excited to look at the books that have been nominated for the prize. There are other people on BookTube who cover the general fiction, but here we're all about trying to highlight the translated literature, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start with just a little bit about the prize in general and this year's nominees. This information is taken directly from the National Book Award website, and then we'll be talking about each individual book and a short synopsis of what that book is about. And then I'll also be giving my personal input on whether or not I would be interested in reading that book and if I have read any of them already. So with that being said, let's say a little bit about the prize. So the National Book Award, in all of its 5 categories that it has, nominates a long list of 10 books, and then they bring that down to, they call them finalists instead of a short list of 5 books. This year, the finalists are going to be announced on October 1st, so not that long from now. And then the winner of the prize this year is going to be on November 20th. So there's a long ways to go before the winner is announced, but not that long before the shortlisted books are announced. This year, the 10 titles represent 6 different languages, and that includes 3 books translated from the Spanish and 3 books translated from the Arabic. And that's so wonderful to see, because although in recent years there have been more books translated from Arabic into English on the list, seeing 3 there is great because historically that is a language that has been very underrepresented, and we love to see it. So very happy to have 3 books translated from Arabic to talk about here today. And then 4 of the people that are nominated, both translators and authors, have been nominated before for this prize. 3 translators and 1 author. So that means the majority of authors and translators are newcomers to getting nominated for the prize, and that's also great to see. We have a good smattering of genre fiction, and we also have 1 nonfiction title. The National Book Award for Translated Literature does not distinguish between nonfiction and fiction titles, whereas some of the other categories do distinguish that. And in total this year, the judges for the translated prize specifically received 141 nominations for the 2024 prize, which is fairly in line to years prior. And then ultimately, just an exciting thing about the prize in general this year is that it's the 75th year of the prize, which is sort of wild to think about it going on for that length of time. But yeah, so happy for them as a prize. I think they generally nominate a really eclectic mix of books, and I've always appreciated that about the National Book Award. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the individual books. So first up, we have the nonfiction book on the list, and this is The Tale of the Wall, Reflections on the Meaning of Hope and Freedom by Nasser Abu Srour. And this is one of the ones translated from Arabic by Leafgren, and it's published by Other Press. And this is the author's memoir of being imprisoned. The author is Palestinian, and he was held in Israel for a very long time. He had been sentenced to life without parole, and this is his memoir about his time being imprisoned and how he was able to cope with mostly being in solitary confinement during that time. So this one will definitely be hard-hitting, but it is one of the ones that I am really interested in. I had heard of this book prior and was already interested in it, so really excited that it got nominated for the prize, and this will definitely be one that I will be planning to pick up. Next up, we have another book that I was already interested in, and this featured in one of my most anticipated videos that came out earlier in the year, and that is the book Censor's Library. This is by Bothayna Al-Essa, and it's also translated from the Arabic by Ranya, Abdelrahman, and Sawad, Hussain. This one is published by Restless Books. And I'm so excited this one got nominated because I haven't really been hearing people talk about it, but the premise sounds so good. I was this close to pre-ordering this from Restless Books, but I ended up pre-ordering like 3 other books by them. and didn't want to go absolutely nuts. So this one follows a censor that works for the government, and it's his job to go through manuscripts and censor out any information that they have deemed inappropriate. Mainly this has to do with queerness and references to other religions that are outside of the dominant religion at the time. But you realize that at night, he actually has taken some of the banned material home and he reads them to his family. And this book is very directly talking about free speech, but I've also heard that it has a very absurd quality and writing style to it. So I think it will be an interesting one to read. And again, really excited that it made the list because this is one that I have been anticipating and hopefully more people will learn about it. So then we have the one book on the list that I have already read, and this is Ædnan by Linnea Axelsson, and it's translated from the Swedish by Saskia Vogel, published by Knopf. And this one is a really expansive novel. It follows over 300 years in the lives of a specific family who are Sami, and it's following their family's migration herding reindeer. And there's some tragic stuff that happens along the way. This book, I will say, I felt pretty lost while reading this book. It is told in verse, and so I decided to read it in audio form because I generally like reading books in verse in audio so I can hear the cadence of it. But I could not keep track of some of the parts of this book. I thought the writing itself was very beautiful and lyrical. The nature writing was great, but overall I could just not thread together the components that the book was trying to communicate to me. So this one wasn't the biggest win for me, but your mileage may vary on this book. So that is Ædnan. And then we have a book that I have not heard of before, and that is On the Calculation of Volume, Book 1 by Solvej Balle, and it's translated from the Danish by Barbara Haveland, published by New Directions. I do absolutely love the cover of this one, which definitely influences me. And this is a time travel novel. I will say, in general, there's a good amount of genre fiction on this list for the translated books, and that's very exciting because genre fiction does not get enough credit on prizes, in my opinion. So we're following Tara, who has involuntarily stepped off of the train of time. And in the world that she lives in, there's a certain day that just repeats itself over and over again, like Groundhog Day style. And I'm really curious how this book deals with the repetitive storyline of repeating the same day. I think it says when we meet the main character, she's on her 122nd version of that day. So I think this could be trippy. If done well, it could be so cool. I haven't read a book like this very often, and I'm definitely interested in reading this one. So that is On the Calculation of Volume. Next up, we have a book that has been pretty popular, at least in my corner of BookTube, and that is Woodworm by Layla Martínez. This is translated from the Spanish by Sophie, Hughes, and Annie McDermott, and published by Two Lines Press. This is also a beautiful edition, and Two Lines Press came out with this in hardcover this year. They only do a couple hardcover releases every year, and this was one of them. And this is a horror novel, so another genre fiction, about a mother and a daughter who live in a haunted house type of setup. And the backstory is that it was built by a small-time hustler who wanted to keep his wife contained. And after a ton of years, their daughter and granddaughter still can't leave and are stuck in the house. So you're sort of drawn into how the house is haunted, what's exactly in there. And it does say that this is a book that tackles the theme of justice. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the plot, but it does sound very exciting. And I have heard a lot of great things about the people that have read this so far. So that is Woodworm, definitely interested. And of course, happy to see Two Lines Press represent on the prize. They were on the prize last year as well. Then we have another book I have not heard of, which is surprising because it's published by Deep Vellum, and I love Deep Vellum as a publisher, and I do not remember reading this in the catalog when I was researching their books for this year, but this one is The Villain's Dance by Fiston, Mwanza, Mujila, and it's translated from the French by Ronald Glasser, and again published by Deep Vellum. This one follows a couple younger male characters who are all struggling. I think they're experiencing homelessness, and they have a chance encounter with this mysterious man who is offering them a way out. But I think that's mining in Angola for diamonds, which is very dangerous. And they decide to go with him, and I think catastrophe kind of happens from there. I'm definitely interested, but this is one where I would definitely, I think, want to see a couple reviews first. I haven't heard anyone talk about this yet before I committed to it, but it sounds decently interesting and about a topic that I have not read about before. So that one's a maybe for me. And then the next one I would say is probably the second most popular on this list behind Woodworm, and that is Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias and translated from the Spanish by Heather Cleary. This one is published by Scribner, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. And this is a plague novel in which an algae bloom has poisoned the majority of the sea and a lot of the food resources for the people that live in this world. And so they have to eat this like revolting pink paste. And I think this book is following one protagonist in particular, but I don't know if she's named or not. And it's about her connections to her family. And I think her family is trying to flee, but she increasingly wants to stay. And it's thinking about this concept of being left behind. And it definitely sounds really good, and the cover is stunning. So this is another one that I'm interested in, and I have it on my library hold TBR actually. So this could be a good fit. We shall see. If you have read this, let me know. And next up we have The Abyss, and this is by Fernando Vallejo, and it's translated from the Spanish by Yvette Seigert, and it's published by New Directions. And this one I think is a autofiction type of novel. The novel follows a main character who goes to visit his dying brother Darlo, who is dying from AIDS in Colombia. And I think there's a lot of historical context of what's going on in Colombia at the time, and it's critiquing Colombian society at this time as well. It sounds very sad though, so I'm a little bit worried about this one, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about it. So this one might also be a maybe for me until I hear some more reviews. But yeah, another interesting pick from the judges. So that is The Abyss. Next up, we have Taiwan Travelogue, another book that I have not heard from at all. This is by Yang Shuangzi, and it's translated from the Mandarin by Lin King, and it's published by Grey Wolf Press. And this follows a couple of main characters who unexpectedly come together. We have a novelist and then the translator that she hires to help come around Taiwan with her. And I think this is another book that's trying to give a lot of context for the culture and place that it's set in. So this is taking place in the late 1930s in Taiwan, but it's also about their unlikely friendship and about, like, I think cross-cultural friendships. So I definitely am interested in that theme. I don't think it's something that I've read about a lot before, but again, have not heard of this at all, even though the cover is very beautiful, and that does always sway me a little bit. And lastly, the final book that we have on the list is Where the Wind Calls Home by Samar Yazbek. And this is the last book translated from the Arabic by Leary Price, who has been nominated several times before. And it's published by World Editions, another press that I love. And this one follows a 19-year-old protagonist who is a soldier in the Syrian army. And at the beginning of the novel, I think he's essentially like lying on the ground dying, and he sees a body being lowered into a hole away from him, and he's not sure if he's at a funeral or what's going on. And then I think it starts going back, it says, in a series of vignettes through his memory, I'm assuming, of how he got there, but it's also talking about the hardships of growing up in his Syrian village. So another book that is really heavily featuring the cultural heritage that the book is set in. And that is, I think, a big overarching theme in some of the books on this year's list. So this one I think could be very interested. I'm definitely going to see if I can find this book at the library because I do think it could be a good fit for me just off of that really short blurb. So those are the 10 books that have been longlisted for the National Book Award in translation this year. Please let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or if you're interested in reading any of them. I've heard of, I think, 6 of them and read 1 so far. A couple were already on my TBR before looking at it, and now I've added a number of them to my TBR. So overall, it seems like a really interesting list. Very different from last year's list. I like that there's more genre fiction on here. So we shall see what ends up getting shortlisted. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.